The afternoon sun spilled golden light over rolling fields, the kind you only see far from city noise. A gentle breeze carried the scent of wildflowers as Ethan spread out a thick plaid blanket beneath the shade of a sprawling oak. Beside him, Maya unpacked a basket of fresh sandwiches, cold lemonade, and a slice of homemade blueberry pie. They had rented this secluded farmhouse for the day, a gift from an old family friend, to escape the chaos of their busy lives. It was supposed to be a day of peace, no calls, no traffic, no interruptions. The sound of birdsong mingled with Maya's laughter as she poured 2 glasses of lemonade. Ethan, dressed in jeans and a casual t-shirt, seemed every bit the relaxed boyfriend enjoying a country picnic, but beneath that easy smile was a man with a very different side Karen was about to meet. The peace shattered with the crunch of gravel under heavy tires. For the past hour, the only sounds had been the lazy lap of water against the pool's edge and the rustle of oak leaves overhead. The farmhouse's golden siding glowed in the warm light, the air carrying the faint scent of fresh-cut hay from the nearby fields. Maya had been sitting barefoot on the edge of a lounge chair, sipping lemonade, while Ethan inspected the grill. It was supposed to be a perfect afternoon, quiet, private, and there's then. The white SUV appeared. It barreled up the long dirt driveway like it owned the place, the hum of its engine rising to a growl before braking hard. Dust plumed in the air, curling around the vehicle like storm clouds. The tires crunched to a final, deliberate stop, just 20 feet away, squarely blocking the drive as if to cut off any chance of leaving. The driver's door flew open, and out stepped a woman in her late 50s. She was dressed like she had walked straight out of a suburban HOA board meeting. Pastel, pink cardigan over a crisp white blouse, beige slacks pressed to razor lines, pearl earrings gleaming in the sunlight. But it wasn't her outfit that struck Ethan first, it was her face. Her lips were pressed so tightly together they seemed to disappear entirely. Her jaw set with the kind of grim determination usually reserved for delivering bad news. And in her right hand, she clutched a clipboard. Not like an accessory, not like a casual record-keeping tool. No, Karen held it the way a police officer holds a baton ready to use. She strode toward them without hesitation, each step carrying a certain practiced authority, the kind that comes from years of controlling neighborhood meetings and dictating lawn regulations. Her heels sank slightly into the gravel with each step, but it didn't slow her down. "This is private property," she barked, her voice cutting through the late afternoon calm like a snapped branch. No greeting, no introduction, just the immediate weight of accusation. Ethan straightened from the grill, his brows pulling together. "Yes, ma'am," he replied evenly, keeping his tone calm. "We rented it for the day." Karen's eyes narrowed, the lines at their corners deepening. Her gaze was a laser, scanning Ethan, then flicking to Maya. She gave Maya the briefest glance, long enough to register her presence, but not long enough to acknowledge her as someone worth addressing before locking eyes on Ethan again, from whom she demanded, the words like a challenge. "Do you have documentation?" Maya glanced toward Ethan, her brows knitting together in confusion. She knew exactly what he was thinking, because she was thinking it too. How could this place be under the control of a homeowners association? They had driven 20 minutes down country roads to get here, miles outside any neat row of suburban houses. The nearest subdivision was so far away that you couldn't even see its rooftops from the back porch. "This land falls under the jurisdiction of our homeowners association," Karen continued, her tone heavy with the sound of someone who was rarely told no, "and I'll need to see proof you're authorized to be here." She didn't wait for an answer. Instead, she yanked the clipboard up and began rifling through its pages with the speed of someone who had done this many, many times before. Sheets of printed forms flipped past, maps, diagrams, some kind of bylaws, all looking far more official than they probably were. The pages fluttered in the warm breeze like an unfurled scroll of medieval decrees. Ethan took a slow step forward, his voice still steady but firmer now. "We booked this property through the owner directly. We have the paperwork in the car." Karen gave a humorless chuckle, the sound thin and sharp. "That won't matter if it's not sanctioned by the HOA," she said. "There are protocols for use, and as far as I can tell, you've skipped every single one of them." She stopped flipping through her papers long enough to point at the farmhouse as if its walls might suddenly confess to harboring rule breakers. "If you don't leave in the next 5 minutes," she declared, "I will be forced to call the authorities." Maya shifted uncomfortably, glancing at Ethan again. His jaw tightened, and his shoulders squared. The measured patience in his stance was beginning to crack. "Call whoever you want," he said evenly, but there was steel in his tone now. Karen's nostrils flared. She lifted her chin a fraction higher, clearly unused to being met with defiance. The clipboard lowered slightly, but her grip on it remained. White-knuckled for a moment, the three stood locked in a silent standoff. The only sound was the slow creak of the oak branches overhead and the distant hum of crickets in the fields. A warm breeze carried the faint shimmer of sunlight off the pool's surface, a serene backdrop to the tension building in the air. But if Karen noticed the beauty of the scene, she gave no sign. She was focused entirely on the perceived trespassers before her, her sense of control slipping like sand through her fingers. Ethan took another step toward her, not threatening but close enough that the sun glinted off something in his hand. His wallet with a smooth motion, he flipped it open, revealing a polished military ID badge. The golden emblem caught the light like a flare, demanding attention. Karen froze mid-sentence, her eyes darting to the badge, then back to Ethan's face. Her jaw slackened ever so slightly, but she quickly masked it, her lips pressing back into that same thin, severe line. "I don't take kindly to people threatening me on false authority," Ethan said, his voice low but carrying. "And I certainly don't answer to anyone who makes up jurisdiction where there is none." Karen's hand trembled just slightly against her clipboard. She tried to recover, squaring her shoulders again. "I'll be checking with the county," she muttered, but her voice lacked the earlier fire. Ethan simply held her gaze, the badge still visible between them. "You do that," he replied. The breeze whispered through the oak leaves again, carrying away the last of the moment's sharp edges. But Maya could tell this wasn't over. Ethan tried reason. "Ma'am, with all due respect, this property is not part of your HOA? We're here legally. I don't have to show you anything." It was the wrong answer for Karen. Her eyes flared with the satisfaction of someone who had just been given the perfect reason to escalate. Her voice, already sharp, rose to a near shout as she jabbed the air with her clipboard. "Trespassing, possible vandalism, unlawful occupation," she rattled off, like a prosecutor delivering opening arguments. The words were crisp, rehearsed, almost theatrical, the kind of speech she'd clearly delivered before to some poor, unsuspecting soul. Maya rose from the picnic blanket, her bare feet brushing the warm grass. She didn't look scared. Not exactly, but her hands trembled at her sides. It wasn't fear, it was disbelief. Disbelief that this stranger, who'd arrived in a cloud of dust and indignation, could be so brazen, so certain of her own authority that she didn't even question whether she was in the right place. "This is ridiculous," Maya muttered under her breath, but Karen was already pulling out her phone. She stabbed at the screen, pressed it to her ear, and began speaking loudly enough that every word carried. "Yes, I'm here at the old Westfield farmhouse," she announced to the dispatcher, eyes locked on Ethan like she was giving a police sketch in real time. "Two suspicious individuals are refusing to vacate the property. They could be dangerous." "Dangerous," Ethan repeated, his patience fraying like an old rope. He took a deep breath, trying to keep his voice level. "Lady, we're having a picnic. I think the only dangerous thing here is the potato salad going bad in the sun." Karen ignored him completely, continuing her report. "Yes, I feel threatened. Yes, I'll remain on scene until officers arrive." She hung up with a little flick of her wrist, like slamming a gavel. Now she was in full stride, both literally and figuratively. Her beige slacks swished as she marched right up to the picnic blanket, her shadow falling over the food and drinks. She pulled her phone back out and began snapping pictures rapid-fire their faces. Their car parked under the oak, even the wicker basket. Click, click, click. Ethan took a step forward, his boots crunching in the dry grass. "Ma'am, stop taking pictures of us." "Evidence," Karen shot back without missing a beat, angling her phone like she was conducting a property inspection. Then came the clipboard. She thrust it forward until it hovered just inches from Ethan's chest, the stack of printed forms, bristling like a paper sword. "Final warning," she said, each word dripping with smug certainty. "Show me your authorization, or get off my land." Ethan's jaw tightened. "Your land? You don't even live here." Her chin lifted, nostrils flaring. "This property falls under the jurisdiction of the Oak Ridge Estates Homeowners Association, which—" "No, it doesn't," Ethan cut in. "This is miles outside your subdivision. You have no authority here." Karen gave a short, humorless laugh, the kind that made Maya's skin crawl. "We'll let the police decide that, won't we?" Behind Ethan, the farmhouse stood silent and golden in the late afternoon light, its weathered siding catching the sun. The pool beyond shimmered like a piece of glass, perfectly calm despite the storm brewing on the lawn. The contrast was almost absurd, a picture-perfect summer day, wrapped around a scene of sheer hostility. Maya stepped closer to Ethan, her eyes darting between them. "Ethan, she's not going to back off," she whispered. "Yeah," he said, quietly. I noticed Karen had resumed flipping through her clipboard, muttering under her breath as though reading out the charges. Violation of Section 4B. Unauthorized occupancy. Refusal to comply. Ethan had had enough. Slowly, deliberately, he reached into his back pocket and pulled out his wallet. His fingers found the smooth leather case tucked inside. He flipped it open, revealing his military ID badge, the polished emblem gleaming in the sunlight. "Your proof," he said firmly, holding it out so she could see it clearly. Karen froze mid-sentence, her eyes locked on the badge, her mouth parting ever so slightly. For the first time since she'd arrived, the steady stream of accusations stopped. Maya crossed her arms, a faint smile tugging at the corner of her mouth. "I'd say that outranks your HOA membership, wouldn't you?" Karen blinked rapidly, her grip on the clipboard loosening. "That's irrelevant. Military or not." Ethan took a single step closer, lowering his voice just enough to make her lean in to hear him. "Ma'am, you're trespassing now. This is private property." and you were not invited. The only person the police will be escorting off this land is you." For a moment, the only sound was the distant rustle of oak leaves overhead. Then Karen straightened her cardigan, tucking the clipboard under her arm like nothing had happened. "Be speaking with the owner," she said stiffly, but her tone had lost its earlier edge. Without another word, she turned and began the long, stiff walk back toward her SUV, each step kicking up tiny puffs of dust. Maya let out a long breath she hadn't realized she was holding. "Well," she said, "that's one way to end a picnic." Ethan watched the SUV disappear down the driveway before finally sitting back down on the blanket. "Next time," he said, reaching for the lemonade, "we're going somewhere with a gate." Ethan slowly stood, the quiet authority in his movement carrying more weight than any shouted retort. At 6'2", his frame loomed over Karen, casting a long shadow across the neatly mown grass. The warm afternoon sun caught in the fine lines of his jaw and the squared set of his shoulders. Maya, still seated on the picnic blanket, felt the air shift. Ethan wasn't angry, at least not in the loud, chaotic way Karen seemed to expect. His calm was heavier, sharper, Karen's chin lifted, defiance written in every rigid line of her body. She clutched her thick HOA folder tighter, like a shield, the edges of her pastel pink cardigan fluttering in the soft breeze. Without raising his voice, Ethan reached into the back pocket of his dark blue jeans and pulled out his leather wallet. The motion was deliberate, almost unhurried, yet carried an undercurrent of finality. "You want to see my authorization?" he asked, his tone even but edged in steel. Karen's eyes narrowed, lips tightening to a thin, colorless line. She seemed almost ready to pounce on whatever flimsy excuse he offered, but Ethan flipped the wallet open with a single practiced motion, revealing a gleaming military ID card, its polished emblem catching the sunlight. The text crisp and official, his full name, rank, and branch of service displayed beneath the seal of the United States Armed Forces. For a brief, unguarded moment, Karen's expression faltered. She blinked twice, her confidence cracking just enough for Maya to notice. "So," Karen finally said, though her voice lacked some of its earlier bite, "that doesn't mean you can just—" Ethan didn't let her finish. "It means," he said slowly, each word precise, "that you are interfering with a lawful, private activity on property you have no authority over, and right now, you're the one trespassing." Karen's mouth twisted into a scoff, but the sound rang hollow. "The police will decide that," she snapped, attempting to claw her way back to dominance. Ethan's gaze didn't waver. "They already have," he replied, his tone almost conversational. Karen frowned, confusion flickering for just an instant, then Maya saw it too. Over Ethan's shoulder, two dark SUVs were approaching at a steady, purposeful pace. The crunch of tires over the gravel driveway was low but unmistakable. These weren't local patrol cars. The vehicles came into clearer view, their tinted windows reflecting the bright sky, their black and chrome exteriors pristine and intimidating. The moment they stopped, the air seemed to tighten. That's when Maya realized these were military police. Karen's bravado faltered again. She glanced from the approaching vehicles back to Ethan, her lips parting as if to say something, but no words came. Ethan didn't look surprised. In fact, he looked almost expectant. "You see," he said, his voice calm as ever, "the farmhouse belongs to my retired commanding officer. We've been in touch with him all afternoon." He overheard this little conversation on speakerphone. Maya's eyes widened. She remembered the moment earlier when Ethan had answered a call, speaking in a low voice to someone she assumed was a friend. Apparently, it had been much more than that. "And," Ethan continued, his eyes fixed on Karen, "he decided to call in a favor." The SUVs rolled to a halt just beyond the picnic blanket. Two uniformed military police officers stepped out, their posture straight, movements deliberate, the sunlight glinting off the insignia on their uniforms. Their presence alone seemed to command the air around them. One of them, a tall, broad-shouldered man, walked directly toward Ethan, offering a quick, precise salute before turning to face Karen. His voice was firm but not raised. "Ma'am, you're being detained for harassment and trespassing on private property." Karen's eyes went wide. "You can't do this. I'm the HOA president," she barked, the edge of desperation creeping into her voice. The second MP approached, his tone flat, almost clinical. "Ma'am, this land is not part of any HOA, and you've just admitted to knowingly harassing lawful guests. That's a criminal matter." Karen clutched her folder of official papers to her chest as if it could still protect her. "This is outrageous. I'll have your badges for this," she sputtered. Neither officer so much as flinched. One took the clipboard from her hands with calm efficiency, while the other gestured toward the waiting SUV. "Please step this way." Karen hesitated for a heartbeat, eyes darting to Ethan, perhaps expecting some last-minute concession. But Ethan only raised an eyebrow. She was guided to the SUV, the slam of the door punctuating the end of the confrontation. The vehicles turned slowly, gravel spitting beneath their tires as they rolled back down the long driveway. Silence settled in the wake of their departure, broken only by the rustle of oak leaves overhead and the soft hum of distant cicadas. Maya let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding and dropped back onto the picnic blanket. A small laugh escaped her lips. "Well," she said, shaking her head, I think we just made the HOA's most wanted list. Ethan lowered himself beside her, the tension in his shoulders finally easing. He picked up his lemonade, taking a slow sip before answering. Let them put me at the top, he said, his mouth curling into a half smile. Something tells me they won't be coming back. The SUVs rolled to a stop in a synchronized crunch of gravel, the sound echoing off the farmhouse walls. Their tinted windows reflected the late afternoon sun, briefly blinding Karen, who instinctively raised a hand to shield her eyes. Two uniformed military police officers stepped out in perfect unison, their boots hitting the ground with a heavy, deliberate thud that carried authority in every step. Even before they spoke, the air shifted calm for Ethan and Maya, suffocating for Karen. Karen's once proud posture faltered. The clipboard she had been clutching like a weapon now hung awkwardly at her side, her knuckles still white around the edge. Her eyes darted between the MPs and Ethan, confusion swirling into dawning realization that she was no longer the one in control. The taller of the two officers, a broad-shouldered man with a jaw cut from stone, strode toward Ethan. First, his eyes swept the scene, taking in the picnic blanket, the untouched lemonade glasses, and Ethan's still visible military ID badge. Without hesitation, he gave Ethan a sharp, precise salute. Ethan returned it with the ease of a man who had done so hundreds of times before. Then the officer turned toward Karen, his tone clipped but firm. "Ma'am," he said, his voice carrying like a gavel, "you're being detained for harassment and trespassing on private property. Please hand over your clipboard and step away from the couple." Karen blinked as though she hadn't heard him correctly. "What? You can't do this. I'm the HOA president." Her voice cracked halfway through the sentence, the self-assured bark from earlier now edged with panic. She hugged the clipboard closer to her chest, as though it might serve as a shield. The second MP, a woman with sharp eyes and a stance that brooked no nonsense, stepped forward. Her voice was calm, almost too calm. "Ma'am, this land is not part of any HOA, she said, holding Karen's gaze. "You've just admitted to knowingly harassing lawful guests. That is a criminal matter. You're coming with us." Karen's mouth opened and closed like a fish pulled from the water. Her eyes darted toward Ethan, as though she might find some shred of sympathy there. All she got in return was his steady, unflinching stare. The female MP moved in with professional efficiency. "Your clipboard, ma'am." This time, Karen's grip loosened, and the thick stack of official HOA papers slipped from her fingers into the officer's waiting hand. The pages, still ruffled from Karen's frantic flipping earlier, fluttered slightly in the breeze before being tucked neatly under the officer's arm. With no further ceremony, the taller MP stepped to Karen's side and guided her toward waiting SUV. His gloved hand rested just lightly enough on her arm to be polite, but firmly enough to make it clear she wasn't going anywhere else. As they walked her away, Karen found her voice again, but it came out and sputtered, fragmented. "Protests. This is outrageous. I'm just protecting my community." Her words fell flat against the backdrop of the rustling oak trees and the distant chirp of crickets. The female MP opened the back door of the SUV. Karen hesitated, looking back one last time at Ethan and Maya, as though expecting someone to step in and defend her. Neither moved. Maya, in fact, had her lips pressed tightly together, clearly suppressing a laugh. The door closed with a soft, decisive thump. Both MPs climbed back into their vehicles, the engines rumbling to life. Within moments, the SUVs rolled away, the gravel crunching under their tires until the sound faded into nothingness. Silence settled over the farmhouse again, broken only by the gentle swaying of the oak branches overhead. The sunlight had shifted lower in the sky, casting a warm, honey-gold glow across the deck and pool. It was almost as if the confrontation had been nothing more than a bad dream, if not for the faint tire tracks etched into the dirt. Driveway. Maya let out a soft laugh, shaking her head. "Well," she said, lowering herself back onto the picnic blanket, "I think we just made the HOA's most wanted list." Ethan chuckled, setting his military ID back into his wallet with deliberate care. He reached for his lemonade, the condensation cool against his fingers. "Let them put me at the top," he said, taking a slow sip. "Something tells me they won't be coming back." Maya raised an eyebrow, her grin widening. "Not unless they want to get arrested again." They clinked their glasses together, the sound light and almost celebratory. Beyond the pool, a bird darted through the trees, and the air smelled faintly of wildflowers. The tension had evaporated, replaced by the quiet, steady hum of a summer evening. For the first time all afternoon, Ethan leaned back fully, stretching his legs out and letting the sun warm his face. Karen's dramatic entrance, her threats, her clipboard, the MP's it, all seemed absurd now, like something ripped straight from a bad comedy skit. But the lingering edge in his voice when he'd told her "we're here" legally reminded him that it hadn't been a joke in the moment. Maya reached over, brushing her fingers against his hand. "You handled that well." Ethan smirked. "I've dealt with worse under fire." And with that, they let the evening settle around them, knowing that for once the quiet was theirs to keep.